Hi, Claudine. Hi, Noémie. Hi, Marcin. Thank you for being here today. The first time we met to organize this discussion with you guys, Noémie, you mentioned AI being used for customer for a long time, but you mentioned that generative AI is still at the low-hanging fruit level. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Of course, yes, and hello everyone, good morning, very happy to be with you today. So yeah, indeed, what I was saying that AI is used for customer experience for a long time now. So just to put a number on that, in Société Générale, 25% of our AI use cases in production are relative to customer experience, right? So here we can find, of course, chatbot, callbots. In the retail side, this is mainstream almost now. So we have 70% of the interactions with the customer in Boursorama, for example, who are handled by Elliot, the chatbot. But there are also chatbot, callbots in other activity, like market activities, for example. We have a trading assistant, which operates requests for quotation on several asset classes, several geographies for a long time now. This is only one part of the story, because we also use AI to boost our, let's say, service offering, to make it closest to the needs of the customers. Just to be concrete on mobility part, for example, we have a business and financing mobility. And you know, with the COVID, there was a market shortage. And it was very hard for people to find the right vehicle on the right channel at the right place. So we have an algo here since 2022, which is called Predict AI, which does this work of bringing the right price and the right distribution channel to our expert for people to have access to the used vehicle at the right price. Customer protection as well. We talked this morning about payment fraud management. We also have fragility, financial fragility detection, which is something which is empowered by AI for years now. This said, why am I talking about low-hanging fruit? This is because when you think about all these use cases I'm referring to, basically what we are doing with AI is that we take a task and or we automate it, or we significantly upgrade the task in order to be more performing for our customer experience. When GenAI came out, we did basically the same. We took the low-hanging fruit, saying we took the task where generative AI was more performing, notably working with unstructured data. We had huge number of unstructured data in banking, being conversations, being text, being email, whatever. So we took this data and we started to explore use cases. We all did the same in the financial industry. We worked on summarization, content generation, content intelligence, advanced search, and so on. Our conviction in Société Générale is that this is only the first stage, and actually GenAI, we really see it as the missing piece of the puzzle of a much broader bench of technology that will really open up the door to massive process re-engineering on processes which are really core in the client experience. For example, if you take KYC in corporate banking, this is a heavy process for the bank and for the customer. You collect a lot of documents, a lot of external data, you do a lot of checks, you also you have several back and forth with the customer, you have to write memos for compliance and so on. So if you think about what this process could look like, mixing up digital technologies, automation technology, basically predictive AI and generative AI, you can really imagine what the process could look like in the future. So this was my point to say we did the use case phase, and now we will probably enter into the full process re-engineering phase.
Okay, well, thank you. What about you, Marcin? I know you do have some new use cases as well at AXA. Can you tell us a bit about this?
Sure. I like a lot what you said about the fact that there is a lot of paperwork in our industry. And if you think about it, actually what insurance sells is a contract, right? It's a promise, which is in written format. So GenAI, I will focus maybe on GenAI because there's definitely a lot of things on predictive AI. I mean, for example, predicting the number of calls in a call center, or predicting, I don't know, risk of churn or risk of fraud. I mean, all sorts of things. But let's come back to GenAI. So GenAI is able to play with the language. Okay, these are large language models, so it's able to manipulate language. So everything which is interaction with the contract is going to be interesting, and this interaction is verbal, is with the language. So there's a lot of use cases for user experience and for customer experience because, well, these contracts are not so easy. Information is lost. There are so many contracts and so on. So you can think, for example, call center, something that we're really looking at and we're working on it. And in the call center, there's a lot of things. You could do things before. So, for example, prepare the agent so that the agent has, sort of like, okay, what happened before I came in, right? You can have something during the call. For example, propositions of what should be your next best action or what are the solution, or maybe the agent has not the answer and goes and does some sort of RAG in the back end, try to find the information, has a summary of that information. And at the end, he can have anything on quality of service or summary of the thing or next actions that need to be taken. So there is really plenty of things to enhance the agent.
Thanks, Marcin, for these amazing use cases. I reckon some of it are already in place at AXA. Claudine, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the future of Gen AI for tech providers, for example?
Yeah, indeed. So as we see, we already have a lot of use cases in place. Gen AI is introducing, as we said, new capabilities. The summaries, they are already there. We want to make them more deep. All of those use cases are going deeper. Take the bots. They're working very well. We bring some generative AI in there, and then we move into one bot to multiple bots, more personalized bots. We're going to train the bots on synthetic data to be very specific. And at the end of the road, you're going to have bots that are auto-trained, which is the next step. If you take knowledge, it's already there. We've introduced knowledge surfacing so that we're transcripting real-time during the conversation, and then it's automatically pushing information that makes sense during the discussion. So this is really helping. And then you add sentiment, reason, wrap-up. So we're taking all those good ideas and taking them a step further. And then if you look at it, today, companies have tested and are introducing agent assist, as in summaries and knowledge. We can see that the next step is the virtual agent. We've seen some announcements very recently. That virtual agent is going to take more use cases. It's going to become more empathetic, aware of the surroundings, and take it even a step further. You're going towards a personal, completely aware, emotionally aware concierge that you may have a hard time differentiating from a person. We're not there yet. The systems today are more on a predictive mode. They're predicting the next word. They're not thinking. But we can see some announcements around solving math issues very recently. So it's not like rocket science. It's gonna be in the next years. And then when you have this, the question becomes, what usage are you going to make of those technologies?
And that makes me think about another discussion we've had. We talked about public cloud computing and how to use it. For example, Marcin, AXA as well as Société Générale, both companies in a highly regulated environment. How can you use public cloud computing, for example?
Well, I think I think that the important question is the highly regulated part.
Definitely.
and there is a second thing which I think is very important, that in as well as banking and insurance, there is a very important thing which is trust. Because so in insurance, you're putting your trust that that the insurer will be there when you have a problem, and in the bank, you want to be sure that your money will be back whenever you need it, right? And so making mistakes, and this goes like a little bit in the direction of these agents that you're mentioning, we're not there yet to put the LLMs in front of the customers, so these models. And it's not really the regulation yet. The regulation yet is not forbidding this. Is the question that we don't want to lose the trust of our customers by making some mistakes. And the panel previously, in the previous panel, I heard that, For example, they were criticizing mistakes by machines. Humans are very critical towards machines. If you think about mistakes made by a GPS towards a mistake made by a taxi driver, you can see yourself, you can feel that you don't have the same tolerance for the machine versus the thing. So at this stage, I think that we are not there yet. And of course, the regulation will come back if we start making mistakes, but I think it's more of a trust issue than something else.
Well, that...
Yeah, indeed, we have two parts. The regulation part, it starts with everything compliance, all the certifications. It also goes to, it's not because you can that you should, and you don't need to put all the data in the system.
I completely agree.
And here, this is a finance summit. So you have regulated, highly regulated, extremely regulated customers. And so we feel in the extremely regulated space, we're going to have to be hybrid. Public cloud is one thing. Some of that data is coming back in your data lakes. The recordings are coming back home for some of the sovereign banks. And so it's not the technology, it's how we're going to do it. And this is B2B, B2C. So we are going to decide how we're going to put to use.
Well, that brings me to my last question to you both, actually. So you first and then Noémie. We talk about the risks of generative AI in a extremely highly regulated environment. How do you address them as a company?
Yes. So I think there are two parts to these questions on the regulation. There are two parts. So there is what is foreseen by the regulation today. So basically in Europe, it would be AI Act. So the AI Act is kind of a proxy of what the Commission thinks and the Parliament thinks about what customers want, customers, not just customer citizens, want to have from an AI, let's say, from an AI system. And so it decodes already some sort of ideas, but it's very difficult to predict what are the real problems. You mentioned, for example, use cases. I mean, so this regulation is done in such a way that this is risk approach. Well, I would say is a risk, so there is a high risk forbidden and then high risk and so on. So there is a notion of risk. I think is not enough. That's my personal opinion. And the second thing is use case oriented. So their use case well identified is an annex. So it's really use case. And I think this is very important. Now, this needs to be implemented, and well, then you need to put governance and so on. So let me take the second part of what I think is also important, is that there are side effects sometimes on all these things. For example, labeling, right? So if you have labeling, so then you may have people working and clicking on whatever for you for a few cents and somewhere else in the world. So this goes more towards ethics. And I think what is very important is that when we adopt AI in a responsible manner, we adopt AI in a responsible manner. Not the AI is responsible. We adopt it responsibly, that we think about all the side effects it has on our workforce and maybe around. And it's maybe around includes, for example, sustainability, right? And I'm not saying it's an easy problem to solve, but I'm saying we should take care and think about all these things all together in some sort of governance of your corporate company.
Yeah, so I can elaborate on that. I fully share. I think there is the use case approach and kind of the strategic approach. And I think what is difficult that you have to do both. So on the use case part, yeah, you said it, we are highly regulated industry. So basically compliance with a risk management approach in general, including regulation, but also just AI principle, responsible principle. This is a no-brainer. You know, there is no room for negotiation at the use case level. This is what you have to implement. And very often an AI project is an IT project, so you will have all the cyber part as well. Very often you work also with partners or with an infrastructure which is not yours, so there is this third-party risk and so on. So there is a 360 risk assessment which has to be done at the AI, at the use case level, which is very important, and we are doing it. The problem is that, yeah, this is an emerging technology, so we have to keep in mind that we are collectively learning and we have to remain humble. So in some cases, this is why we have pilots, this is why we have human in the loop as well, because even if we can put in place some guardrails and then anonymization, I don't know, for data quality, data protection. We can have red teaming. Giscard told about all the supervision that you could put. This is, of course, very useful, but still, you will need the vigilance of your user, and you will need to train people for them to be clear about what the model can do, which level of quality, and what they can't expect from the tool or the model so far, and why. This is on the use case part. Then, if you want to really implement AI at scale, so meaning putting really AI at the core of your operational model, the use case approach is not enough because you want harmonization, because when you're a big group, you want to be able to say to the regulator that your processes are implemented a bit the same way everywhere in the group, and you want speed. That means that you do not want to reinvent the risk assessment each time. So you will need an enterprise-wide governance on AI, kind of AI framework, and this is a huge job and a collective job because you will need expertise from everywhere in the bank, and potentially you will also need to co-build it with your peers, because in the end we have no interest as an industry to have different framework, because in the end with the regulation we do not want to have to apply very different best practices. It's better to be on the same page from the beginning. So this is a very important stream also in our AI acceleration plan, this governance part, to be sure that we have common standards in terms of risk management, which can also provide speed to the businesses because they do not have to reinvent all the time the analysis.
Thank you, Noémie. You wanted to add something, Marcin?
No, I think one thing that you said, which is really hard with AI, or at least for us, is that it's really transversal. And it's a transversal, and now it's becoming also transversal and external. Meaning that it's transversal because then you have the pricing function, but then you have the claims. For example, in our case, these things are quite separate, although they communicate with each other. And now they use both AI. And so now you need to have a framework. You call it a framework. We call it governance. And you need to have this transversally. And then you said, okay, these things doesn't live in the air. It's not just a model or in an Excel file. It's actually a system in an IT. So now you have all the IT governance. So there is a big challenge to make sure that so it really resonates. And now, on top of it, we have the challenge that for the large language models in particular, these things are being developed outside. So now you're having a model which is, for example, I don't know, whatever, Mistral, with whom we have partnered. And then you want to fine-tune it, as you said. You want to make it, train on your own data, so it does your task the way you like it, or has the same way you're speaking as you like, so the same tone for your customer, and is uniform across your company. And this fine-tuning suddenly is like hybrid, right? This responsibility is not anymore the model from somewhere else. It's your model trained. It's somewhere else model trained a little bit on your data, and then who is responsible for what? I mean, of course, we are customer-facing, so we have to be responsible towards, but is there a responsibility looking backwards, right? So really resonates what you're saying about this kind of transversal and very complex environment, but I think we're working on it.
Claudine, I think you have a closing word for us today.
Yeah, we develop those solutions. You guys use them. So, but in terms of ethics and how we design things, there are a few rules. Privacy by design, it's not an afterthought. Transparency, no black boxes. Because how on earth can you manage the systems if you don't see what's inside? We detoxify before we train. There's no use training them and then cleaning up. And the final word, it really is a balancing act about doing the right thing when it makes sense. And I'll say we're a bit lucky in the EU, because in case we didn't want to do that, there are some regulations that are going to make us. So, hey, kudos.
Well, thank you all three for being with us today. And thanks for your views and opinions about AI for a customer. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.